Thus it was that I landed at Logan Airport at the end of October. As a matter of fact, the flight over had been pretty terrifying. An air hostess I spoke to confessed that she had never experienced anything like it before, nor did she hope to experience anything like it again. At one point I thought the plane was being torn apart as by a giant's hand, and I was obviously not the only person on board to entertain such feelings. There was no problem telling which religion a passenger belonged to. Some prayed clutching Bibles or crucifixes. The priest next to me crossed himself. Someone in the row ahead intoned the Shema. An Arab in flowing robes, heedless of the captain's warnings, undid his safety belt and prostrated himself on the floor. A friend of his, who was gesticulating wildly and pointing at something ahead of him, cried, "Sheshma!" I would hardly term myself a religious type, certainly no holy Joe, but I felt, as do many at a moment of dire distress, the need to pray, though I was regrettably a little out of practice. "Not yet, Lord," I began. "I'm too young to go. Give me a chance to serve Thee to a ripe old age. Grant me an extension as Thou didst to Hezekiah." I suppose my use of the archaic thee and thou goes back to my days at Sunday school, when Mr. Robertson would lead in prayer. As long as he addressed himself to religious themes, it didn't matter so much, but there was always a giggle or half-suppressed snort when he said things like, "Everybody hopeth and prayeth that the weather for our outing shall be most clement, yea, warm and sunny." The battering the plane was receiving was no laughing matter, and my prayer was in dead earnest. Scarcely had the name Hezekiah passed my lips than a strange sense of calm overcame me. Shortly afterwards the turbulence was ended, and we continued our flight to Boston without the least shake or vibration. Cases and baggage had just been cleared by the customs, and I was looking for somewhere to sit in the waiting hall when I heard someone call my name. "Hi, Danny! Let me get your bags for you. The car's outside." "Hello, Pete," I answered. "It's great to see you again. It must be 3 years since you and the family visited us on your trip over to Britain. How's everybody? How's everybody keeping? Well, I hope." "You bet. They're all there, just dying to see you. And that goes for Dracula and Frankenstein, too." "Oh, really?" I said with complete open-mindedness. "You bet. They're all waiting there." As we drove through the tunnel connecting the airport with the town, Peter asked about the flight over. He was not impressed greatly when I told him of the mortal danger I'd been in. Having been a bomber pilot in the USAF, he was inclined to dismiss my description of a bumpy flight as the understandable exaggeration of a civilian flight passenger who has never seen real action. "You don't bother about turbulence when the flak shells are a-bursting all around. On my first mission, hey, was I scared. It was no use crying for Mammy. I soon got used to it, though. You get fatalistic in the end, you know, the bullet with some guy's name on it. I was too young to see much of the Jap showdown, but I got my fair share of the Korean hell. Let's have a look at downtown Boston." I dimly remembered from my history lessons that Boston was where the American Revolution got underway. "We got a heavy program lined up for you, boy. Lexington, Concord, Cape Cod, where the Pilgrim Fathers landed, Cambridge and Harvard. Either me or one of the boys will be free to drive you to town and show you all around. See that red line over there. I could see a continuous red line on the nearby pavement. Yeah, it runs from the State House over there, that building with the gold dome, and leads all the way to Paul Revere's house. It's called the Freedom Trail. You heard of Paul Revere, I suppose? Paul Revere? Why, he was the one who rode through the night to spread the good news about the revolution and tell everybody to throw out the bloody British. Though I would hardly term myself a fanatical patriot, I was rather taken aback on hearing this. But when Pete slapped his hand on my leg with a hearty guffaw, I felt much relieved that my host had no intention of avenging the Boston massacre on me. As it happened, we passed the old brick colonial building in front of which the atrocity took place. It were almost well with the world if whatever several deaths could appall us today as much as they did in the 18th century and merit such a name. What's that modern building over there on the other side of the square? I asked. That's the City Hall, commemorating J.F. Kennedy. Heard of him, I suppose? I laughed politely. Yep, the Kennedys originally came from the area around the docks where the Irish immigrants settled. Then the Italians came. We'll have to go down there and have a pizza sometime. Here in Boston, we have a good number of blacks, too. Don't get me wrong, I'm no racist, but race is a big problem right now, especially in the way it affects schools. Plenty of people I know are taking their kids out of the public schools and sending them to expensive private ones. See, the public schools, especially those in the downtown areas, are going to the dogs, if they haven't already gotten there. You heard of busing? Like, that's enforced integration, right? It's no damn use legislating to change people's hearts. The Civil War never really solved the problem of emancipation, right? The most, it gave the process of emancipation a kind of a boost. You get what I'm trying to say? I nodded. In any case, Pete continued, the real issue of the Civil War was fought over was the preservation of the Union and not slavery. That was just the red flag to get people mad about. Right. I don't want to sound callous, but you know something? Both Lincoln and Kennedy, now this may shock you, were lucky enough to get assassinated before their images got too besmirched by too much messing around in politics, like after the heroes' stuff was over. The lights ahead changed to red. Excuse my going on about politics like this. See that tall building over there? It looks like it's made of glass. That's the Hancock building. They say it's jinxed. Its window panes keep cracking for no apparent reason. Now we'll leave downtown Boston and drive along the Charles. That's the river between Boston and Cambridge. After passing through Boston suburbs, we drove onto a pike. We continued for about 20 miles before turning left into a narrow road. This led to a number of small townships consisting of houses built in the old colonial style. This is it, Pete said, at last, as we turned into a narrow driveway. Home, sweet home. I bought the house and several acres of woodland before the big hike in property prices. What could you get for $50,000 these days? Some poky little condominium, you bet. I was just about to ask what a condominium was when I thought I saw something strange in the obscurity of the trees. What's that? I shouted. What's what? Was that some kind of monk or friar I saw darting between the trees? The lights caught him as we turned the bend. A monk, eh? That's probably one of the guests, taking a stroll for a breather of fresh air. Wait till you get to the house.